All right, today is January 23rd, and this is Bag Talk presented by Berkmeyer Innovations. Big weekend of sports. It's going to be a little bit different of an episode, as I'm not going to spend as much time talking about football as I normally do, because I want to get to talking about the Baseball Hall of Fame voting that was done yesterday. I disagree with some of the decisions and have a couple strong opinions on the Baseball Hall of Fame. But first, let's get into the NFL games. First time in a couple weeks we didn't really have a good game. The Titans spotted the Chiefs, or the Chiefs spotted the Titans 10 points. Chiefs end up winning 35-24. San Francisco dominates Green Bay 37-20. Out of those four teams, this is the best possible Super Bowl matchup, I believe. I think it's going to be a great contrast of styles between a team that likes to run the ball and has a great defense and a team that throws the ball and has a mediocre defense. I do think the 49ers are going to win, but we will talk more about that next week. We might have some people on. We might have a couple guests on to talk about the Super Bowl. Before we get into the Baseball Hall of Fame discussion, we now have a Facebook page, Bag Talk Podcast on Facebook. Please like, share on Facebook if you can. Also, subscribe on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Subscribe, unsubscribe, resubscribe. There's still, if you comment on the Facebook page or on the Apple podcast page, you're entered to win a prize. It'll be a random selection. We didn't have a whole bunch of comments last week, so we will be doing that this week. Thank you very much. So now on to getting all that out of the way, we're going to talk a little bit of baseball right now. I want to preface this by saying I'm not one of these guys I'm a football guy. I'm not a big baseball guy. I root for the Cubs heavily, but if the Cubs aren't on, I'm probably not watching baseball. I enjoyed there's the Ken Burns baseball documentary. I watched that. I enjoy that. I enjoyed the historical aspect of it. My grandpa's a big baseball fan. My mom's a baseball fan. My cousin plays baseball. My grandpa on my dad's side was drafted by the Cardinals. But yeah, there's a lot to be discussed, and this is the time of the year where baseball comes up. I'm not going to talk about the Astros cheating scandal because I think that's going to play out its own way. I don't really have a strong opinion on that because it's kind of contradictory to what I'm going to talk here. The Baseball Hall of Fame announced 2 inductees by voting, one by the senior vote. Larry Walker and Derek Jeter get in. Derek Jeter falling 1 vote shy of being unanimous. Larry Walker only making it in by 4 votes. Or 6 votes, I mean. And the big 3 that are off the ballot for controversial reasons, Curt Schilling, Roger Clemens, Barry Bonds, still out. Clemens and Bonds stay right about the same. They only picked up, I think, 3 votes each. Schilling goes up by another 10%, so he's trending towards making it. Larry Walker actually got in. This was going to be his last year on the ballot, and he finally got in. He was a guy who people didn't really want in because they thought his hitting numbers were inflated from playing in Colorado for most of his career. 17-year career, 383 home runs. He hit .313. Obviously a great player. 1997 NL MVP. Along with that, he was a pretty solid fielder. 7-time Gold Glove, 3-time Silver Slugger, 5-time All-Star. Won 3 batting titles over his career with the Expos, Rockies, and Cardinals. He's one that I was always on the fringes of because he was such a great hitter, but I felt like there were other hitters in the era that were better. He was definitely an example of them trying, the MLB Hall of Fame, looking for a guy to put in over Bonds, Clemens, and Schilling. The way the MLB Hall of Fame works, there's 397 votes. You need 298 to be elected, which factors into about roughly 75% of the vote. Jeter being one away from being unanimous isn't surprising. He's a very... We'll talk about Jeter later. I got a lot of opinions on Derek Jeter. He's a great baseball player. I'm not sure he deserved to be one shy of unanimous. Because if you're going to set that up to be such a selective club, then you can't just put guys in that were big because of the commercial success they had or because they were a really good player on a really good team for a long time, but they were never the best player on their team. But I'll get to that in a second. The MLB Hall of Fame is the dumbest Hall of Fame in all of sports because the voters are just a bunch of old, craggly white guys that hold opinions and like to forget that baseball was almost dead in the mid-90s. After the strike, attendance numbers were down when it came back, and a couple players, Clemens, McGuire, Sosa, Rafael Palmeiro, Roger Clemens, took steroids to help improve their numbers and improve their bodies, and that's just a couple of them because there have been reports that as many as 79% of players at the time are using steroids and HGH and whatnot. But the MLB voters like to forget that period of time where people were hitting they had 5 guys that were hitting 60 home runs. That period of time saved baseball for the most part. It's just an oversight. Like, I get it was cheating. I get there are some people that were not playing with that advantage. I get that. But just ignoring an entire time period in the span of baseball, where baseball is as big of a deal as it's ever been. Baseball still has never reached the ratings that it had for the Cubs and the Cardinals games when McGuire and Sosa were chasing Roger Maris' single-season home run record. Or nobody was ever tuned in as much as they were when Barry Bonds hit 73 home runs in 2003. I think it's time to let steroid users in the Hall of Fame. Give them their own wing. If that's that much of a big deal to you, give them their own wing. Say, these guys use steroids, so they were cheaters, but still they had a great impact on the game of baseball. I mean, baseball's Hall of Fame sits right now in a position where the all-time leader in home runs, the all-time leader in hits, and the all-time leader in Cy Young Awards won are probably never going to be in the Hall of Fame. And it's sad. And then on the issue of Curt Schilling, where Curt Schilling has a Hall of Fame career, but he's a loudmouth guy that a lot of writers won't like because he goes at them on Twitter or he's a big Donald Trump supporter. That's keeping a guy out for that reason is almost weirder to me than keeping him out for steroids. Keeping him out because he has controversial opinions. Because you just put Chipper Jones in the Hall of Fame. You just put, widely considered one of the best baseball players of all time, Ty Cobb's in the Hall of Fame, and he is very much has a long history of being racist. I mean, he's by all accounts one of the worst people to ever play sports, and he was voted in the Hall of Fame in the 40s. So if you're gonna keep Ty Cobb out, or if you're gonna have Ty Cobb in, and Chipper Jones has also said some wildly outlandish stuff about race and immigration and stuff like that, the same stuff that Curt Schilling is saying. It makes no sense to keep Curt Schilling out of the Hall of Fame at all. He won 3 World Series. He's arguably maybe the best postseason pitcher of all time. He broke the Red Sox curse. He beat the Yankees. He had an incredible series against the Yankees when he was on the Diamondbacks. He was part of the best 1-2 playoff duo of all time with him and Randy Johnson. It's just like personal vendettas like this keeping people out of the Hall of Fame in base. It happens in baseball more than anything else. Because these guys are probably... Curt Schilling has a good chance of getting in next year. I'll talk about that in a second. But Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens are likely never going to get in the Hall of Fame. The same with Manny Ramirez. And these kind of lesser guys that are not going to get in. Manny Ramirez, Sammy Sosa, Gary Sheffield, Jeff Kent, Andy Pettitte, Jason Giambi. These are all guys that kind of deserve to at least be thought about for the Hall of Fame. They're never going to get that recognition. I mean, Manny Ramirez came along when I started watching baseball, and he was the best hitter I'd ever seen. He's probably the best. I remember watching him hit a home run against the Red Sox. For the Red Sox that went over the Green Monster. First baseball game I really remember watching vividly. I mean, 2-time World Series champion, World Series MVP, 9-time Silver Slugger, won a batting title. Probably one of the best right-handed hitters of all time. And he's never going to get in the Hall of Fame because towards the end of his career, they found out that he was using steroids to kind of keep his career going. Which is sad. And I think Manny Ramirez definitely deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. So I think, and looking at the ballot next year, it's going to be tough for them to keep out Schilling, Bonds, and Clemens, who are all on their 9th year. So they only have 2 more years on the ballot to get them in. They kept McGuire out. They kept Canseco out. They only have to wait 2 more years to keep Schilling's, Bonds, and Clemens out. So, I mean, it's really sad. It's disappointing. Football kind of does this sometimes, like them making Owens wait an extra year when he was a problem, which I get because Terrell Owens made teams worse when he was there. Like, you took a team in the Eagles. I mean, the Cowboys and the Eagles. He got there, and his attitude made teams worse than they should have been. He was a great player, but after he left San Francisco, he was so much of a head case that he hurt people. I don't think that was ever the case with Bonds, Schilling, or Clemens. I mean, Clemens won multiple World Series. Bonds carried the Giants to a World Series in 2002. He came facing those great Braves teams away from taking the Pirates to a World Series. It's just something that more recently than ever has gotten my goat a little bit. I used to be one of those guys that never let the steroids guys in. But when you find out it was such a big part of baseball at the time, like there were very few great players that weren't using steroids at the time. King Griffey Jr., Randy Johnson, Pedro Martinez come to mind. Pudge Rodriguez comes to mind. There's just no reason not to give them a separate wing. Just put them in the Hall of Fame. Just get it out of the way, rip the Band-Aid off. Somebody's got to do it. Because these old writers are going to be around long enough to keep them out. And I hope it's not one of those things where they're elected when they're super old and it's a big deal in like 2024 when we put them in the Hall of Fame as veterans. But it just gets my goat about the whole keeping guys that use steroids out of the Hall of Fame at this point now. Now that it's kind of still a problem with the allegations against Mike Trout using HGH, or the fact that Robinson Cano's been caught twice using steroids. Urias Familia from the Mets was caught using steroids. But 2 guys got in. That brings me into my next topic, which is Derek Jeter overrated? And Derek Jeter is probably the most respected player of this generation of baseball because he never, or at least officially, he never used steroids. I think if you look at the way his career progressed, he had a year where I could point at and say that's fishy. Shortstop for the Yankees for 19 years or for 20 years. His career in earnest really spanned from 1996 to 2014. 260 career home runs, 1,300 RBIs, 310 batting average.